This video is brought to you by my patrons over at Patreon. To learn more about the Patreon, stick around till after the video and learn how you can join the casual crew. Until then, enjoy! Hey everyone, it's Casual Jake and I am bringing you another FNM Report, the series where I take an off meta to low tier deck. I take it, give you a deck tech, I take it to my local Friday Night Magic Pioneer tournament and I report back to you on how the deck fared. This week I have an exciting deck for you that features one of the most famous and beloved tribes from Kamigawa. Let me check that up. Rogues? Well, yes, this is a Rogues deck, and that last bit was a joke, but we have added a bunch of ninjas from the latest set, which gives our evasive Rogues extra utility as we can ninjutsu in these value creatures for a number of purposes. This is a mid-range deck that can get out on the board early and generate value as the game progresses, while still interacting with our opponent and keeping their threats to a minimum. And with that basic overview out of the way, let's dig a little deeper into the specific cards in the deck. So as I mentioned before, this is a modified rogues list, so you're going to see the usual suspects. They're just bound to appear. We got Merfolk Wind Robber, a flying 1/1 that mills our opponent when it does damage, mills them for 1 card. And then it also, we can sacrifice it and draw a card if our opponent has 8 cards in the graveyard, 8 or more. Now that 8 in the graveyard is going to be important because it's going to turn on a lot of our rogues, including this next one, Thieves Guild Enforcer, which is probably our strongest 1-drop in the deck. On top of being able to cast it on flash speed, this is a really good card that's going to mill our opponents for 2 anytime that a rogue enters the battlefield. And then of course when we have that magic number 8 in the graveyard, it gets +2/+1 as well as death touch. Dropping this early, we can really mill out our opponent and quickly turn on that rogue, all those rogues abilities. So we definitely want to see Thieves Guild Enforcer in that opening hand. Lastly, in the rogue slots, we have Soaring Thought Thief, which like the Enforcer can be cast at flash speed. Again, very relevant. It's a 1/3 flying rogue that gives all of our other rogues +1/+0 if our opponent has 8 cards or more in their graveyard. And not only is this a Lord effect, but this card can be flashed in, meaning we can sometimes get in some sneaky blocks or go ahead and flash it in on the opponent's end step and then swing in, mill them for 2, because this card does say when a rogue attacks we get to mill them for 2, and kind of come out of the blue. So that flash speed offers a lot of flexibility. Now you're probably noticing that most of our rogues have evasion, right? Thieves Guild Enforcer kind of has invasion with death touch, right? So it's a little less likely to be blocked, which means with these evasive creatures we can get in and use that ninjutsu ability. If you're not familiar with that ability, basically for ninjutsu you play an alternative casting cost, you return an unblocked creature and then you put in the ninja in its place, and you can get some value with those ninjutsu abilities. Usually the ninjutsu abilities are cheaper, or they allow for something special to happen. First up, we have Moon Circuit Hacker. It can be ninjutsu'd, it can be I'm making up words here, but we can ninjutsu it in for 1 blue mana, and it lets us draw a card when it deals combat damage to an opponent. Now it says we have to discard that card unless it entered the battlefield this turn, which means when we ninjutsu it in, we get a free card draw effect from this card. Then we also have Silver Fur Master, which is a 2/2 that pumps our other ninjas and rogues, so it's going to pump everything in our deck. It also makes our ninjutsu abilities cost 1 generic mana less, which is very relevant with our next card, Biting Palm Ninja, which can be ninjutsu'd in for 2 generic and 1 black mana. Again, if we have that silver fur out, it gets even cheaper, and this is one of my favorite cards in this deck. So this is a 3/3 that enters with a menace counter, and then when it deals damage to our opponent, we can remove that counter. If we do, opponent's going to reveal their hand. We choose a non-land card from that hand and we have them exile it, right? Even better, you might think, well, don't you want them to discard? Well, exiling like a Phoenix or there's lots of prominent cards that we do not want our opponent to have access to, so sometimes exiling can go a long way and stopping their plan for recursion. But why not cause double the trouble? Well, with this next card we can. The next card is Thousand Faced Shadow, which by the way is already an evasive 1-drop. For 1 blue mana you get a 1/1 with flying, but if you ninjutsu it in, it does cost a little bit. It's 2 and 2 blue, but when you ninjutsu it in, you make a token copy of another attacking creature. Imagine Biting Palm Ninja, our opponent won in this turn, and oh no, you exiled my card. Next turn we attack, make a copy of it, that copy is going to come in with that menace counter and we get to do it again, right? So surprise copy can really go a long way. Copying a Lord effect, copying the Biting Palm Ninja, there's lots of great stuff. This card has definitely closed out some games by copying just the right card at just the right time. Now this deck's unique in is it runs a lot of, or should I say it runs some one-ofs cards, right? Just some value one-of creatures, and they're very interesting. I will say they do make an impact when they do come in. They're not something that you necessarily want to see every game, but when they hit the board, they are definitely doing something. First up, we have Nashi Moon Sage's Sign, which is a 3/2 that when it deals combat damage to our opponent, they exile the top card of their library, and until the end of the turn, we can cast that card, and instead of paying its mana value, we have to pay its life. Recently played this on MTG, casted up here into the Abyss. It was incredible. We won the game. It was awesome. Nashi can definitely do work, and this does this is a repeatable effect every time it deals damage, but we do ninjutsu it in, so sometimes we can kind of guarantee, like, oop, there you go, gotcha, didn't expect that coming, right? It could get us extra removal spells from our opponents. Sometimes it can just keep them away. If we know they have something tucked away at top that they want, we can get rid of that. If you know they scry and they say, oh, I'll keep it on the top, Nashi could be a good way to disrupt their plan. But as far as a card that I have cast way more, and I can like sing its praise all day, I have to talk about 𝐤𝐻, the honorary ninja himself. Now I say honorary because this card doesn't technically have ninjutsu, but for 2, 1 black and 1 blue, we can return an unblocked rogue. Again, it has to be a rogue, and we can put 𝐤𝐻 to play tapped and attacking. Then when it deals combat damage to our opponent, we look at their graveyard, choose a non-land permanent, boom, we plop it down on our battlefield. So we get to return a non-land permanent from our opponent's graveyard and put it onto our battlefield. This has definitely won me the most games. Like, just like as far as a single card goes, we're milling. I mean, that's the whole game plan of Rogues, right? Is to mill early and get value out of their graveyard. Where 𝐤𝐻 allows us to actually capitalize on it, steal whatever is going on, and we're gonna get into it later in a little bit to the report. But this card definitely put in work later, or this card definitely put in the work, should I say. And of course, we have to talk about the Ninja Planeswalker themselves, 𝐂𝐚𝐬𝐿. This card is super cool. I don't even think it necessarily has to be in a Ninja deck to be good. That phase out ability is just so good, knowing that you're going to get 2 activations with 𝐂𝐚𝐬𝐿. I've seen a lot of people play it, you know, for 3 mana, make the token, the unblockable ninja token, let it phase out, come back, know that you're going to get in with the token because it's unblockable, and then know that you're going to get that card draw. But usually when I've played it, I've had a board to protect it anyways, and I'm able to activate and proc 𝐂𝐚𝐬𝐿 like 2 or 3 times and effectively get that card draw. So again, we're running 3 copies. We're never really angry to see it, and it's not only adding to our ninja count with its minus ability, but it's also generating that card advantage and protecting itself. So next up, we have a pretty standard removal package, especially when it comes to the rogues. So we're running 4 fatal pushes, which is kind of cool because we can revolt this really easily if we ninjutsu in. Technically, we had a permanent leave the battlefield, so it does turn on that second ability, that revolt ability, so we can hit 4 drops and below from there. We also have 3 Drown the Locks. Again, we want to mill our opponent, and Drown the Locks can allow us to destroy a creature with mana value less than or equal to the numbers of cards in graveyards, or counter a spell. Drown the Lock, save lives as long as we can get some cards in their graveyard. And lastly, we run 1 copy of Tyrant Scorn, which actually wasn't my include. That was part of the internet like deck that I saw that I kind of changed a little bit. But I actually really like it because it can destroy a creature with mana value 3 or less, or sometimes it can just bounce something out of the way. And if we're bouncing a big blocker and we just need 1 more turn to go, that can really get us the game right there. Or we can even use it to protect our own creatures. You definitely used it in that case where we've returned some of our own creatures to our hand so that we had something to play the next turn. As for lands, some pretty basic stuff. We run 3 islands, 2 swamps, 4 watery graves, 4 clear water / murk water pathways, and 2 shipwrecked marshes, as well as 2 drowned catacombs. Now we also run an Urborg. I can't say it not like that. Urborg. There we go. Everyone says Urborg. Oh my god, it's Urborg, but Urborg, Tomb of 𝐂𝐚𝐬𝐿, just to fix our black mana. Castle Locthwain so that we can keep drawing some cards later in the game. An Odawara Soaring City, and 1 copy of Takenuma. Of course, these new Kamigawa lands, it's almost hard to say, like, why not just run them? They come in untapped, they do some great stuff, they have some utility, so we run both of those. We also have 2 copies of Mutavault so that we can keep combat going. It gets pumped by our Rogue Lords, by our Ninja Lords. Plus, it could even be the target for ninjutsu in a pinch. I've definitely had it where, you know, it's late game board stall, or should I say a late game board wipe kind of comes in and we need something to do, so we activate that Mutavault, swing in, but then ninjutsu in a greater value creature that kind of helps us spiral a little bit ahead. As far as the sideboard goes, we have 2 Blood Chief's Thirst for some extra removal, especially for our larger threats, 2 Duresses to disrupt our opponent's hand, 2 Grafdigger's Cages for those Phoenix and Winota matchups, and 2 Crippling Fears are just a great one-sided board wipe. We name rogues and we get everything else -3/-3. We have 3 copies of Mystical Dispute, which can definitely come in handy when we need to counter against our other blue opponents. I run 1 Brazen Borrower because it can bounce that non-land permanent, or should I say, and it kind of contributes to our rogue count, right? It's got evasion, we can flash it, and lots of good stuff. We also have 𝐂𝐚𝐬𝐿, the Silent Spider, which lets us pick apart their graveyard and really pick apart combo pieces. When it comes in, you choose a card in the graveyard, you search their hand, you search their library, you get rid of all those cards, so it's really good against the combo players if we happen to mill one of their combo pieces. We also play 𝐂𝐚𝐬𝐿, Trader of 𝐂𝐤𝐿, which is a pseudo rest in peace because it's going to exile our opponent's non-token creatures when they die, plus it's going to give us a 2/2 black zombie token. Lastly, we have a single copy of the Scarab God, which not only has our opponents lose X life and lets us scry X amount of cards, where X is the number of zombies we control, but again, it kind of helps us take advantage of our opponent's graveyard by letting us reanimate any creature in any graveyard for 2, 1 black, and 1 blue. Like Zera, just like I said, it lets us leverage their graveyard. Let's say they do something really cool in their graveyard. They just happen to bin it because we mill it out. Now we can actually get access to it and use their creatures, or, you know, in this case, use their creatures for our advantage. Alright, now it's time to move on to the FNM report, the part where I tell you how this worked at my local Friday Night Magic Pioneer Tournament. So again, we played this deck at the Game Closet here in Waco, Texas. We played it on April Fool's Day, April 1st of 2022, and we actually came in 4th place out of 10, going 3-1. I was way happy with this deck. I was not expecting it to do this well, but super happy, and it was a fun deck to play. People saw it and they were already kind of like, whoa, you're doing rogues? Like, that's where no one's really doing that. And they saw the ninjas and everyone was like, oh my gosh, I need to see your deck list. Like, this is so cool. So if you want to definitely be the talk of FNM, this deck could definitely, you know, draw some eyes, draw some attention, and I think it's all going to be positive. I think it's really fun. I think people enjoyed it, and you know, just it was cool to see something brewing, something different that we're not used to seeing at FNM. I think a lot of people enjoyed that. So round 1, we played against this new kind of take on Rakdos Sacrifice. You know, Rakdos has always been strong in the meta. This specific build was Rakdos Sacrifice. We lost, ended up going 1-2, and it's, in my opinion, fairly even matchup. This was actually my first time playing the deck, and so I definitely kept some hands that I probably shouldn't have sideboarded in, I think a little bit poorly, which lost us the match. But I think it was, again, a pretty fair game, and given the chance again, I think we might have been able to pull it out if, again, we would have had just a little bit more experience. So game 1 was grindy, but the opponent got that win, just barely inching out some more value. Again, I just wasn't as familiar with their deck or my deck, so I was just trying to figure out what all my cards did. And then game 2, as they described it, we just steamrolled. Again, their word, you know, I know the player, we have good conversations all the time, but they were impressed with how fast we were able to get out with our 1 and 2 drops, start pumping them, and go, get rid of anything that they kind of had in the way, and we just ran away with the game, kind of with an aggro plan almost. We even stole their graveyard trespasser, which is kind of a big deal because it could get rid of graveyards, but with Zera-san, we were able to take it, and that just led to speedy GGs right there. Then in game 3, there was a little bit back and forth. They ended up winning there. We just weren't really generating any card advantage, which is a kind of a weak part of the deck. Moon Circuit Hacker can help us dig a little bit, but other than that, there's not a lot of card advantage except for, you know, Kaido as well. But that's about where we stand, and so we just didn't have those card draw pieces, and opponent was able to get out in front of us. I remember this too. They picked apart our hand with 2 Thought Seizes, so that really messed messed up our early turns and resulted in a loss, but a very, very good game nonetheless. So then we go to round 2 where we played 𝐂𝐚𝐤𝐿𝐻. Yes, the meta matchup we're all waiting for. You, of course, want to know if these homebrew decks or these kind of off-meta decks can take on the heavy hitters, and in this one, I can gladly say that we did. We ended up winning, going 2-1 in our favor. Game 1, we really didn't have any interaction, and 𝐂𝐚𝐤𝐿𝐻 pretty much just did 𝐂𝐚𝐤𝐿𝐻 things, right? They got out their Elvish Mystic out quick, were able to ramp out Prosperous Innkeeper, get their stuff, fix their mana, get 𝐂𝐚𝐤𝐿𝐻 out, swing in, and just snowball from there. But in game 2, we had a little bit more removal. We made sure to keep the removal in our hand. We brought in a little from the sideboard, and we even brought in Grafdigger's Cage, which became a little bit relevant after my opponent. We were able to stall him a little bit. They started building a board, and then we played Crippling Fear. We got to keep all of our rogues, but decimated all of their stuff. They didn't have a 𝐂𝐚𝐤𝐿𝐻 out. They had they had out their mana dorks. They had out even a brutal Cathar, but brutal Cathar is 2 toughness before it flips, and we just Crippling Feared, got rid of all their stuff, resolved a Grafdigger's Cage, and it was basically GG's from there. Then in the third game, we probably had my favorite play of the game. Got out pretty early, started milling them, milled a Tovolar's Huntmaster pretty early, then was able to send in one of our evasive rogues, get Xerath in there, and actually steal the Tovolar's Huntmaster when it was nighttime. So it came in already transformed, it made those tokens, and it just snowballed from that. I mean, it's so cool when you're able to use your opponent's big, beefy, game-ending creatures, and they become haymakers for you. So that was really awesome. Because we had gotten rid of theirs, we were able to keep ours, and we just started on the front foot from there. And with that Tovolar's Huntmaster for us, making the 2/2 wolves every time, every turn it attacked and stuff like that, we just snowballed from there and just took the game over. Got to give a special shout out to round 3. I actually got to play one of my friends at work who we actually jam games during our lunch break. So shout out to you, friend. He was on Orzhov Auras. So because we had played at work before and played on our lunch break, we kind of knew each other's decks, so that was kind of interesting. I'm sure it affected the way that we kept our first hands, but I did end up going with the win, going 2-0. There was a lot of smack talk, of course, we're talking stuff, and that's really the thing that I remember from this game the most, was just that we just had so much fun playing each other. And really, at the end of the day, that's kind of what the Friday Night Magic experience is about: meeting people, having those friendships and whatnot. And luckily we stayed within our time. We didn't talk too much, but it was still just such a memorable game, getting to play with one of my best friends. That being said, as far as the match went, we just made sure to keep removal. Every time that we saw Light Paws hit it, we had to make sure that we had that Fatal Push. Same thing, SRAM, Drown the Lock. I basically wouldn't keep a hand unless it had some early interaction, and that really helped them from getting ahead of us. And because of that, we were able to go 2-0. Then in round 4, we got to play a deck that I actually talked about in my last FNM report. It was the Rakdos Scourge of the Skyclave deck. Again, a really cool deck that's all about symmetrical damage with things like Roiling Vortex and Stormfist Crusader, and then finishing off the match with Scourge of the Skyclave, hopefully for my opponent being very big. We ended up winning this one 2-0, and I know a part of it was opponent seemed a little bit tilted. It wasn't even about the game. They had ordered a bunch of TCG player cards off of TCG player, and it's been like a month and they still didn't come in. They're trying to get a refund and stuff, but of course they wanted some new cards. They were excited for the new cards that never came in, so they were a little disappointed with that. They also had some unlucky draws right there, I think affected the game, but we were able to basically just do what we had been doing. We milled them out, stole creatures with Xerath. Xerath, again, I cannot overstate, just a house going forward, and we were just able to build our board up. And opponent, again, like I said, some unlucky draws, maybe kept some hands that they should have maybe looked second at, because they weren't playing a lot of early interaction or early blockers and whatnot, and we were just able to kind of take over the game. But again, my favorite part about it was that we got to talk afterwards, and they kind of laid their deck out, and we talked about it and went through it. And this I was gonna say this kid, I say that because they're like high school age and I'm a teacher and whatever, but this guy, really cool mind, really, I love seeing the way that they thought about their deck and the kind of strategies that they had. And I thought it was really neat that they were exploring an archetype or a strategy that I don't think has been explored very much. And I almost hope that there's a new Death Shadows kind of style card so they can make this deck really go. But anyways, I just wanted to compliment them. I think they have a really intuitive mind, very creative brewer, and I can't wait to see what they come up with next. Alright, so it's time for my final verdict on the deck, and I just want to start off by saying this deck was a blast to play, especially because it's not really my style. I'm very much an aggro player, and this deck, while it can be aggressive, is definitely more of a mid-rangey kind of deck. You know, interacting early, not just showing all of our cards, not just, you know, creature attack. It's just really about reacting a lot of times, though it does, again, have that flexibility of being proactive. The Rogues is, you know, an archetype that I've seen before. In fact, we even had a Rogues player at our FNM. I think he switched decks a little bit. But chances are you probably have like a standard Rogues deck or something laying around. But these ninjas really bring in some flexibility and I think strengthen the deck. Moon Circuit Hacker, again, going to start giving us that card draw, while Biting Palm Ninja goes towards disrupting their hand. I think these ninjas, like I said, they just give it a little bit more flexibility, and it makes it from just like a, oh, I'm going to mill you and maybe get value about that. And the mill, again, in a world of phoenixes, isn't always the best thing. This kind of gives you some other options to do. Clearly the deck went 3-1, and I definitely think it's FNM viable. I've even been kind of messing with it on MTG. No leagues yet, but we're getting there. But it does well. Like I said, it just has a lot that it can do. Early removal, it's got interaction, it's got, you know, counter magic with the drown and the lock. You can definitely side in more counter magic if need be, and I just think that I'm not the best gauge of a deck. I'm not saying that this is real or you're going to see it at the Pro Tour or anything, but adding the ninjas, I think, really boosted this deck, and I would highly recommend playing it especially if you have all these cards. You know, like you got a box of Zendikar Rising uncommons and rogues and stuff. Throw it together, like go for it. Some Kamigawa. A lot of our stuff really isn't even rare. It's just commons and uncommons that give you really good value, and then the rare cards don't even cost that much anyway, so it's a fairly cheap deck, land base, you know, not considered for that, but it's a lot of fun. I really like it. When I'm thinking about like tweaking the deck, I'm not sold on Nashi. I like the card. I think it does cool stuff. I think it might be better in EDH because, you know, that it is a symmetrical thing that when you hit an opponent, it exiles all of your opponent's cards. So of course, we're only getting one card off of that when in Pioneer, where in EDH you're getting 3 cards. So I'm thinking about cutting it for the other Zerathon because, as I've mentioned, all 3 of my matches, or really all 4 of my matches that I've won games in, were just off Zerathon. Zerathon came in, stole their best creature in their graveyard, and we won the game. And I'm thinking we cut one Nashi, put in one Zerath, one extra Zerath, make it a total of 2, and I think that might be where I want the deck to be. But other than that, I think the deck runs really smooth. I didn't have any games. I always felt like I was doing something, and I feel like that's like one of the best attributes of a deck, is that you always feel like you're doing something. Well, there you have it. I hope you enjoyed this FNM report. I got a lot of really good feedback on the last one, and I would love to hear what y'all thought of this. Is this the style of video that you like? I just, you know, was it the right length? Did the deck tech help? The FNM report, like, what do you like about it, or what do you think we could do better next time? Go ahead and tell me what you think down in the comments. I also want to take this time to thank our patrons. We have some new patrons over there, so check out their names as they're scrolling up the screen. Thank y'all so much. Y'all make this all possible, and even just dropping a like and subscribing on YouTube, that goes a long way. If you don't want to join the Patreon, or if you can't afford to, it's all good. But I will say, Patreon's a fun stuff. We try to make it fun. There's some perks in there. There's a Discord that you can join, all for as low as $1 a month. It just goes so far to help out the content and the growth that we're seeing in the channel. Well, until next time, I'm Casual Jake reminding you, don't forget to play your land drops. I'll see ya.